I used to transcribe police interviews. I quit after the unexplainable case of El Miedo. For 9 years, I listened to harrowing accounts from victims and chilling confessions from monsters. I parted the curtains which concealed the very worst crimes of humanity. I must have gazed in 10,000 faces of evil. However, all of that horror paled in comparison to the case of El Miedo. A sickness that continues to spread. The inexplicable thread that binds disconnected tragedies. It goes by many names and wears many faces. You would be fortunate to never tumble down that rabbit hole of terror. Excerpt from Case 178203. The interview of Jane Doe.
You know, it's strange. Michael had claustrophobia and he used to dream about being crushed by walls. When he died, it was horrible. His contorted limbs, the compressed shape of his corpse. It looked as if the room had... Never mind.
We're still trying to ascertain the cause of his death, Miss Doe. It seemed to have been misadventure. What was his state of mind on that evening?
He'd been unravelling for weeks, talking about a man who was coming for him.
And the mental issues were...
A new development. He was never diagnosed with schizophrenia or psychosis, but he kept hallucinating this thing. It took many forms. Suffocating crowds of people, rooms shrinking, exits disappearing. All paranoid delusions, his doctor said. I'm not so sure. Before the stalking, he was a neurotypical man who cruised through life. But his claustrophobic fear changed him. It changed all of us.
Do you have any leads as to who the stalker might be?
No. Don't ask that question. Ever. That's how he gets inside your head. He's not really a man, you see.
That was the first interview which filled me with terror. Given the sensitive nature of police interviews, the transcription company employed a lovely HR representative named Tia, my closest friend, who was there whenever anybody felt particularly affected by a case. She was also our company's multilingual transcriber, so she translated French and Spanish police interviews.
That would have scared me too, Flo.
She said, shivering.
It reminds me of something horrible that a Spanish boy mentioned in another case. He called it El Miedo, the fear. I don't know whether you believe in superstitions, but his story really unsettled me.
She shouldn't have done it, but Tia showed me the transcript. Excerpt from Case 110011. The interview of Milo Diaz.
Do you think I'm making this up?
I just want to know why you and your friends are sticking to this fabricated story about the murder of Graham Jackson.
Do you actually understand Spanish? Is that the problem? I can speak in English if you want, but Graham used to say I was terrible at it.
No, Milo, I understand you, but aspects of your story are impossible.
We all saw it. Do you think we had a shared hallucination or something?
No. You and your friends are lying, and I want to know what really happened to Mr. Jackson.
Graham always worried that he was going to develop Parkinson's, like his dad. He would get paranoid about losing physical control of his body. As the forest creature plucked Graham's spine from his back, it taunted him about his dad. And then Graham... well, you know the rest.
Right. And how could this man inexplicably know Graham's deepest, darkest fear?
It wasn't a man.
I'm aware that these seem to be transcripts of mentally unwell, overly superstitious people, but I instantly believed in Miedo, and I wanted to save his victims. My daughter Gracie often says that I put others before myself, but altruism was never a bragging right for me. It was a self-defense mechanism, born of a broken childhood, an act of self-preservation, not selflessness. Over the following weeks, I thought more about how I'd come to be that way. My obsession with Miedo took hold, and I kept thinking about my oldest fear. Uncle Matthew. The cruel man who raised me whilst my father was in the hospital. Whilst recalling the terror of my childhood at a family dinner, I bawled in front of everyone. We don't mention my uncle. I saw how much it hurt my father.
I really think you need to talk to someone about your trauma, Mum, Gracie told me.
Therapy was always a taboo subject for my generation, I replied. Okay, boomer. She chuckled, trying to cheer me up. Boomer? I'm 37, I protested, smiling. Did a case at work trigger this, Flo? My husband asked. Maybe it's time to take a break.
No, Charlie, I was just being silly. We all need to cry sometimes, right? I'm fine, I lied. I'm sorry for ruining dinner, everyone.
Don't be sorry, my father tearfully begged from the other end of the table. You're stronger than my weak, pathetic brother. Don't ever forget that. I wanted to believe that I'd simply had a stressful few weeks at work. I wanted to believe that watching countless traumatic interviews had taken a toll on my psychological well-being. But there were too many coincidences. Too many intertwined tales about an inhuman thing that hunted people. At what point does synchronicity become something more than chance? Something sinister? Last month, I finally quit my job, after enduring a horror that defied explanation. One evening, as I sleepily strolled to bed, I was horrified to find myself faced with my childhood room. Floral wallpaper, a collage of photographs on a bulletin board, and a teensy vanity desk. I turned to flee, but froze at the sight of a bricked-up doorway. The barrier festered and oozed the black, sludgy substance. I started to hyperventilate, feeling an arctic chill across my flesh. Miedo. The peony-coated wallpaper started to tear, and that black sludge slithered through the wounds. I finally realised that it was tar, my uncle's tobacco remnants. I gasped in horror at the photographs on my wall. Matthew's face twisted towards me. I screamed at the sight of his enlarged eyes and grin, exacerbated versions of the features that had haunted my youth.
A child must be seen, but not heard.
A guttural voice croaked from the brickwork barrier behind me. My uncle always let me know that I was a burden. That's why, to this day, I still put everyone else first. Whenever I thought of myself in that childhood home, I suffered. I'm not altruistic. I'm just afraid. The leaking tar began to pool onto the carpet, forming the colourless shape of a man. Uncle Matthew observed me with tobacco pupils. Enormous eyes and lips filled his face. That's how my traumatised mind remembered him.
Your mind,
I thought. This is all in your mind. The tar tentacles of my inhuman uncle seeped across the carpet and climbed the sides of the bed before encircling me. The ghoulish appendages were crawling over my clothes, and I shrieked, clawing at them. Horror. That was what fueled El Miedo. I wasn't going to be another police case. I had to do what the others didn't. I had to cure the sickness. I turned to the wall of photographs, and my eyes locked onto those of my cancer-ridden, emaciated father. Everything was in my mind. Everything is in my mind, I told myself. Dad, I croaked, repeating what I had told him many years earlier. There's something wrong with Uncle Matthew. My photographed father's eyes locked onto mine, and his flesh adopted a healthier glow. Suddenly, from the floral wallpaper, a new form emerged. Dad's body was composed of peonies, and he coiled his spectral form around the thing pretending to be my uncle. Matthew's sickly tentacles retracted, and I crawled off the bed, cowering from El Miedo. The room began to quake, and a torrential downpour of tar rained from the cracks in the ceiling. I drowned in a sea of blackness. Flo? Charlie cried. I found myself standing in my present-day bedroom. I was a fetal ball, shivering in the corner of the room. I didn't tell him what I'd seen. I'm still barely able to explain it to myself. I sweated out the fever of El Miedo. That's all I know. You might not believe my story. Horror only lives in the mind, after all. It's our primal perception of things. But even if El Miedo were nothing more than an infectious idea, would that change the truth of what happened to me? Fear is always a contagion, after all. A sickening seed that grows in the mind, refusing to be uprooted. It isn't content until we have been wholly erased, and the fear is spreading. That's why I know El Miedo hasn't left me. It hasn't left any of us.